You might looking for my face. Wait a minute. Thank you so much for coming to our discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's really nice.
Yeah, just online. Oke, 3 menit, 3 menit lagi ya. Yoka,
Oke, 3 menit lagi kita mulai.
ya sambil oke Kak, silakan dimulai.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleague. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, Nation City Arena Sport Events, Nation Building and City Politics in Indonesia. Selamat siang Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, rekan-rekan semuanya. Saya sangat senang sekali siang hari ini bisa menyambut Bapak dan Ibu sekalian dalam acara webinar kita hari ini. My name is Yoka Pramadi and I'm your host today. Nama saya Yoka Pramadi dan saya akan menjadi host acara webinar hari ini. Yang terhormat Bapak Profesor Ahmad Najib Burhani, PLT Kepala Organisasi Riset Ilmu Pengetahuan Sosial dan Humaniora Badan Riset Inovasi Nasional. Today's agenda will be opening speech from Dr. Lilis Mulyani as Head of Research Center for Society and Culture, and then continues with presentation from Dr. Frederique Trottier that will be guided by Ms. Aulia Hadi as moderator, and then finally discussion. Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, acara kita hari ini nanti akan dibuka oleh opening speech dari Dr. Lilis Mulyani sebagai Kepala Kantor Pusat Riset Masyarakat dan Budaya BRIN, dan dilanjutkan dengan presentasi dan diakhiri dengan diskusi. And then setelah itu juga akan ada acara foto bersama, jadi Bapak dan Ibu sekalian juga harus mengaktifkan kameranya. So, ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure to introduce our special guest today, Dr. Frederique Trottier. She is Assistant Professor in Comparative Development and Cultural Studies at University of Passau. Her research interests concentrate on sport, urban geography, and popular culture in Southeast Asia, and especially in Indonesia. She is building a solid publication record in this area with articles in the International Journal of the History of Sport and Asia Pacific Journal of Sport and Social Science, and also a chapter in the Routledge Handbook of Sport in Asia. Also, she is an editorial board member of the Asian Journal of Sport, History, and Culture. Baik, Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, ladies and gentlemen, today moderator is Ms. Aulia Hadi. She is our colleague too in Research Center for Society and Culture, and now she is pursuing PhD in University of Glasgow. Beliau juga sebelumnya menamatkan sarjana dari Ilmu Komunikasi, Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik, visi Universitas Gadjah Mada. Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, saya yakin Bapak dan Ibu sekalian sudah tidak sabar lagi menunggu pemaparan dari Dr. Trottier. So, guten Morgen for Dr. Trottier. Sorry, is that correct? And yeah, I just learned today. Danke for this. And Please, Mr. Aulia, the time and screen is yours.
I think like before we start the discussion, there will be like a welcoming remark for Mbak Lilis.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, I missed that part. So please, Miss Dr. Lilis Mulyani to give opening speech.
Okay, thank you very much, Yoka. I think Yoka is a little bit nervous here. Thank you, Yoka. Good morning for Dr. Trottier and Aulia in UK and in Passau. Selamat siang untuk peserta yang lainnya, semuanya di Indonesia. Firstly, I would like to express my gratitude for Dr. Frederica Trottier and Aulia for initiating this very important webinar. Center for Society and Culture, the National Research and Innovation Agency, or BRIN, which is the new name of the Indonesian Institutes of Sciences, or LIPI. I am very pleased to host this webinar. In modern society, we all know that sport can become one factor that forms or bolster personal or group identity. Competition between groups or nations, particularly through sport competition, may play in the process of identity formation, which is very interesting to see and to discuss. Whether and how this process through which individuals try to sustain their identity. I actually would like to share only two short slides about the picture, sorry. So athletes carrying the national flags and supporter who aims to boost the spirit of competitiveness have shown both generic and these identities, yeah, whether it's personal, whether it's group, whether it's cities, or whether it's also national or like state identities. In this slide, we can see that in 1963, for example, we held Ganevo, or the Games of the New Emerging Forces, aiming to show International Olympic Committee, or IOC, that the new emerging countries, such as the Asian and African countries, and also few communist countries, such as China and Russia, in this particular event, the Ganevo, is established the event in the aftermath, which Indonesia hosted. So Indonesian government at that time is very close to China and prevent the Taiwanese and the Israel athletes to come to Indonesia. And this was the first time IOC has ever suspended its member. And the Ganevo actually made it clear that that politics and sports is intertwined, and this ran against the doctrine of the International Olympic Committee, or the IOC, which separate politics and sport. Here, one statement from President Sukarno. He said at that time, "Go to hell with IOC. We are developing countries, have our own international sport competition, which is the Ganevo." And the Ganevo, which is held in 1963, also held by participated with. There are 51 participants from Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe. And in this particular, Sukarno used sport, or Ganevo, as one tool to show national pride and national politics of identity. And the latest event in 2021 in Tokyo Olympics, red and white flag, quoting her own reflection on multiculturalism in Indonesia. She said that, "My coach is Chinese, my field partner is Papuan Blitar, and I am originally a Minahasan with a touch of Chinese. If it is not for Indonesia that unites us, we will never be united." So my reflection here in this particular more meaningful and in-depth discussion on how sport event is actually more than just a celebration of identity or a joyful event where people cheering up for their athletes, but more than that, it holds a deeper process of identity and between groups. So sport contain bigger role in nation building. And I'm proud that PMB BRIN pioneers the discussion on such an important topics. So again, I would like to thank Frederica Trottier and Aulia Hadi for BRIN, and also to all webinar participants, who have joined us this afternoon. I hope that we can have a fruitful discussion later on. Thank you very much, and I will return the screen to Yoka Permadi. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Lilis, for the opening speech and the insight information. So this is the main. Okay, so please, Ms. Aulia, the time and screen is yours to be a moderator today.
Okay. Good morning, all participants from Glasgow, UK, and just like thank you for Mbak Lilis for delivering the welcoming remark, and also Yoka for hosting this event, and also welcome to our speaker Frederica Trottier. So yeah, it's just like Yoka just give like introduction about Frederica. So yeah, Frederica is the assistant, and yeah, it's just like studies on like sport, nations, and politics in Indonesia are still very restricted these days. It's just like there are several publications in journal articles written by some like scholars like Frit Columbine and then Andy Fuller and some Indonesian scholars just like Fajar Junaidi. And this book like has just been published. It's just like one of the pioneer book to discuss about the sport event, nation building, and city politics in Indonesia. And here in her book, in Indonesia, and this book just like deliver kind of it's comprehensive studies about the multi-sport event in Indonesia, just like Mbak Lilis introduced, from the Asian Games in 1962 to the current days. And it's just like also elaborate how the political context in
and for Aulia for introducing me and my book, and to Yoka for hosting this event. So I will start sharing my screen now, and then get started with my talk. Is it visible for everybody, the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, so thanks again for having me and for the warm welcome. So in this talk, I will present essential parts of my book, Nation, City, Arena, Sports Events, Nation Building and City Politics in Indonesia. So it was recently published by NIAS Press. And what I will talk about today, so first in the introduction, to introduce the framework and key aspects of the study. And then I will also go back in time. So what Lilis already mentioned during the Suharto era, so the developments in post-Suharto Indonesia, and what I call the turn to the civic, with the example of the city of Palembang and its sports city strategy and remapping. And in the last part of my presentation, I will discuss the 2018 Asian Games in more detail, because this is the most recent one and also the biggest sports event in Indonesian history. Before starting my introduction, I would actually like to share two very inspiring moments. Arrived in the city of, I mean, I was a bit nervous. The airport up to me and asking whether I need any help and starting a conversation. So it was that really stayed with me. Is the opening ceremony of the 2018 Asian Games. So I was in the Bung Karno Stadium and I really had goosebumps, and it was such an impressive moment. So it's maybe also kind of a nice thing to have, like these memories, and it's part of my research journey. And I really cherish these memories. Now coming to the first part, the introduction. So it was already mentioned, but maybe just to summarize again the general contributions and then the approach of my study. So I really tried to do a comprehensive study of international multi-sports events in Indonesia between 1962 and 2018. Because when I started to be interested in the topic, I realized that there was hardly any English language academic literature on it. So that was also encouraging me to go deeper into this topic and to analyze sports events, to reveal these different junctions and entanglements between sport and the nation and city politics and place marketing in Indonesia. And to look at these events over time also helped me to reflect on the power structures and also global influence. For quite a long time, I was thinking how to structure my work. So in the end, it made sense to kind of stick to the chronological order, but also to look at it in a spatial geographical way. So really to see this big change from Indonesia being so centralized and nation-centric to giving more importance to the civic level after the fall of President Suharto. And talking about geography, so what concerning city politics and urbanism, and this was also reflected in sports events. So Jakarta was the most frequent host city. But as I said, so in recent years, due to the decentralization process, we can really see this development from nation-centric to making cities new arenas of power and representation. And in my point of view, the sports event reflects this so well, and as a new host city and in the post-Suharto era. What are the main arguments? Just the key aspects. So sports events in Indonesia reflect the relation between national and city politics, and regional autonomy, and also that regional cities become arenas of representation and local agency. A second argument is that their performative nature and the visibility and symbolic power make sports events coveted prizes for different stakeholders. And then my argument related to the city of Palembang and its development into a sports city, which I call remapping. I will discuss this in more detail later. So this contributed to new negotiations with regard to power hierarchies and legitimacies in Indonesia. And also these changes in the city demonstrate the proliferation of city promotion and branding exercises in Indonesian cities. This is just an overview of the sports events I discuss in the book. So during the Sukarno era, it's the 62 Asian Games, the 63 Games of the New Emerging Forces. During the Suharto era, post-Suharto era, I discuss the 2011 Southeast Asian Games, the 2013 Islamic Solidarity Games, and the 2018 Asian Games. So when discussing sports events, of course, I have to place my discussion within the broader debate about sports events. And on the one hand, it's about sport and nation building. So the role of sport to build national consciousness, identity, patriotism, etc. But my focus is even more on the urban context. And this also relates to discussions about modern sport as urban events. So it's often related to aspects of urbanization, city development, city marketing, and branding strategies. And my discussions also believe in the ability of these sports events to bring about social change, economic development, prestige, and a shortcut to modernity to the host city and the host country. Now I come to the second part, so sports events, nation building, and Jakarta-centeredness in the Indonesian past. So when we look at the period of President Sukarno, we have a strong link between sport and nation building. And Indonesia can be seen as an example of sport being related to the emergence of a modern nation state out of colonialism. And Sukarno played a key role in this process and also in promoting sports. So he saw sports as a very powerful tool for nation and character building. And he was interested in hosting events as a means to boost Indonesia's standing in the world, and of course also his personal position in global politics. As Lilis already mentioned, politics played a crucial role in these events. So there was actually strong politicization going on. So with regard to nation building, the events helped to make sport a part of building what was called a free spirit, which was one of the key elements of Sukarno's policy. So to create an identity of Indonesia as a revolutionary nation. But the sports events were, of course, also related to national unity and pride, and had the goal to create modern patriotic citizens. Especially these sports events in the 60s were very important for Jakarta and its role in the country. And hosting these events and having a new infrastructure also manifested Jakarta's role as the capital, because it wasn't actually that clear at that time. And we have all these urban transformation and the building of prestigious buildings, and of course of these events and of sport and sports events in general in Jakarta. So also having a very, very long legacy. Moving on to such a juncture at this time, so Suharto broke with all the political mindset of the Sukarno era. So it's quite natural that you would also see major changes in Suharto's sports policy. So what we see now in the following decades is also in a way not so surprising, that we have a strong link between sport and pembangunan. And it's also about kind of shaping people, but it's not Southeast Asia, and which we can see is also linked to Indonesia's role in the ASEAN. So Jakarta was hosting the SEA Games in this time period. And now we can see this really undisputed role of Jakarta as host city. So Jakarta's monopoly over politics, economy, and urban trends also meant that and the centralization and bureaucratization of sports events and other sectors of society were also kind of reflected in these sports competitions. And this strong centralization of all parts of society also means that so that we can actually talk about a turn to the civic. And now in this part, I come to my case study of Palembang. But before introducing Palembang and its urban changes, just Indonesia, power and attention mean that the new order period, so like for regional centers in Indonesia to act on their own and to create their own policies. And especially secondary cities could claim stronger and more visible positions. So with secondary cities, I mean, it's usually the kind of regional capitals and economic centers maybe within Java, but maybe also outside of Java. And two major in Indonesia. So this already started during the new order. So it's a longer process, but it also had strong effects on cities. And of course, this Big Bang decentralization, so to forms of cityization and urban renewal, politics or of city politics, and an increasing intercity competition going on. So Indonesian cities also entering a more global neoliberal competition with major projects, for example, infrastructure projects. Now coming to Palembang, so the city can look back on quite a long period of economic development, but especially in Indonesia, fairly negative reputation of criminality and violence and pollution and backwardness and boredom. And well, I always like to read this quote from a publication in the early 2000s, which I think it's like really telling what this negative reputation actually meant. So I quote, "Boring. Its inhabitants are of the worst you can get as a place." So, so there was definitely the need and the pressure to improve community for laws. Well, it was a strategy in a way that kind of developed into a strategy, because it was not kind of, but like with different aspects coming together. In this way also to challenge all these new order certainties of centralization and power hierarchy and legitimacy. And the strategy to become a sports city and a sports events destination included, for example, to repeatedly host sports events, to establish a big sports complex with venues of international standard, and to create and communicate a success story of Palembang as a sports city, and with this also to counter this very negative image of the city, and to replace it with a new and different story about this identity as a sports city, and with this also to claim modernity and development. And one key element also of this narrative of Palembang's success was the sports complex. So the Jakarta cohesive unit of venues and buildings, all in one place, and also like venues of international. And this sports complex, sports plays in Indonesia, but also with a reputation beyond Indonesia. And what is interesting, and this also reflects the general development of Palembang, that the Jakabareng sports city was also built in a place that had a fairly bad reputation. It was said to be haunted. And now, with having all these new venues and other buildings and infrastructure, it became a symbol of modernity and of transformations in the city. And it became an important asset in city competition and negotiations when Palembang was trying to. So what is included in this process is city marketing exercises and the attempt to make Palembang a role model for other places. So that means to kind of increase the reputation and thus climb up the ladder of competition of cities in Indonesia, and also that other places would actually look at the example of Palembang. And for the aspect of re-evaluation and repositioning, this also means to actually put Palembang on the map. So in the Indonesian context, but also on the Southeast Asian map, to the Asian Games. So to make the city visible and known also in an international context. So for other performances and to really make the city, the whole city, a stage for popular performances. So related to the events, but also, let's say, with countdown events prior to the Asian Games, or to include different cultural programs during an event, and so forth. And all these exercises contributed to what is discussed in the literature as eventalization and festivalization of urban space. And these exercises have the target to animate urban spaces and to change them also for the citizens and to re-evaluate them. And I have some examples of these exercises, so you can talk about concerts, or what I have here in the picture with light shows as visible and to a city's success story. Now I several key provincial governments, but in Indonesia, having a sports, and shortly, so seeing that this was like one key actor in this process, and generally it was more the local elite evolved, or not much inclusion, wishes, demands, criticism. And this also means that several processes of exclusion and marginalization were going on, so within the city, but also within the province. And a mixture of, and now after hosting the Asian Games, which was of course a very big event, there's always the question, so how to continue? So so maybe not just this strong focus of events, but maybe to put it in a broader context, were elements of, and all about money and getting funds. And the question is, where does the money actually go to? And isn't it that sports events are actually just to major cases of corruption? So of course I could go a bit more into detail about this, and then maybe later on we can discuss to talk about the recent Asian Games. But before the post, so hard to like new trends in hosting events, and these transformations from a new order, a political interest, for example, in hosting the Asian Games, which is of course a very big event. And related to this, but this also means increasing rivalries between potential host cities. So when we have more interest, then there's also sports events, and then that's co-hosting. So for many events, there was always the idea to co-host, or to include actually, and they kind of found the same the Asian Games. So Indonesia became the big and of nationalism important. It was so the how the event this was not really part now of the narrative. It was more about Sukarno's charismatic leadership, the opening ceremony. So, of course, it was also important to see that the event was just for the competitions and for campaigns, and especially Jokowi's performance then to be re-elected general, showing him in a positive light certainly helped him. It was quite interesting to see in the preparation time how the two cities had very three different of all these games put pressure of the city was host. And there was also a lot of negotiations going on with Jakarta and the Olympic Council of Asia. And as a co-host was come to my conclusion. The role of sports events as arenas for performance and representation. For national and city politics, national purpose, to having more local agency and focus on city development and marketing. And the sports city Palembang shows this increased agency of local actors after the implementation of regional autonomy, and this increased relevance of city marketing and competition, remapping. Writing the book, it was about Indonesia hosting the 2032 Olympics. Now this is already out of reach, but the discussion is continuing. So maybe there will be an Indonesia 2036, be some sort of, maybe a third we also discuss, but we also just have to wait for what the future brings in this part of discussions of all these.
Okay, yeah, thank you for newlywed. Like how this kind of mega sport events like provide opportunity for cities or smaller towns in Indonesia to renegotiate their position within the Indonesia or even like in the global space. But then at the end, some criticism is just like also make us wondering whether like this kind of mega sport event really turn the power from like the centralizations into like more civic powers. Is that true? It's just like because to a certain degree, for instance, like Palembang, for instance, Alex Nurdin, and then it's just like the local football clubs, for instance, like media to frame his like legacy and leadership for the presidential election. So is this really like it's so I open like the opportunity for a discussion. So if opportunity, as well as you can also write down your question in the chat. Okay, I give to Faridan Anshari.
Okay. Hello, Frederick, Dr. Trottier. How are you there?
Thanks.
Okay. Let me introduce myself first. My occupation is a lecturer, and now I'm media and social science, but especially on the football subject. Okay. I believe I have already read your chapter about Ganevo in the Routledge Handbook of Sport. That's right. The book with the red cover. And when I'm searching about Ganevo's history, I know that you wrote that. And from that chapter, I can find that there's some point that China as a country have their own ambition and become your new book, and this research is very interesting. And I believe you can find, and you found the big relation between sport in Indonesia and politics. That's so nice, right? When he come to the opening show and he got elected again as the next president, right? There's some connection there. And my question is about the relation, the interest from the leader here. They're also trying to reach some political status inside the government, and also will relate it to the power inside the society. So what do German in your place, or thank you so much. That's my question. Thank you, Ms. Aulia.
Okay, thank you.
Do we collect questions?
Maybe, yeah. It's or would you like to answer it directly one by one?
First one when answering the second one.
So maybe we can answer for the first question then from the Mas Faridi and Ansari. So it's just like, what do you think about the relationships between the political leaderships and the sport?
Yes, so political act strong in Indonesia. Those link. So it means that politicians who are involved in sports always have their specific kind of usage and so on. I mean, with Alex Nurdin's son, it actually didn't work out that he became the new governor. So somehow of the elites, and then they can vote for somebody else. But it's, yeah, I think it's really something that also maybe scholars or the public in Indonesia has to discuss, so that it's more visible, and then that it's not just accepted, but maybe really entering Germany. But in European countries, it's a bit more hidden, the political interest. But what we can certainly see is similar situations in other Southeast Asian countries. So I know from my colleague, Simon Creek, who has worked on sports in Laos, that it's also a country where it's a case from outside, infrastructure area. But
so much for the answer, Dr. Chotier. Sport?
Please, yes, go ahead. And that's like for everybody. So I would be happy to.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Thank you, Ms. Aulia.
Yeah, thank you for Mas.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Frederica. I hope I pronounce your name right. Yes. My question is, Palembang is more a Muslim city and a Malay-related city, right? Like you mentioned that. How the Palembang actors struggle in putting themselves in that kind of identity. Revival in the country is not so struggle to keep in the Muslim thing more.
Thank you very much. That's really an interesting aspect, and I think this whole discussion about modernity that's something that comes up when brings funds, and we can improve the infrastructure and thus to have better or this urban development and so on, and this means modernity. So it's just like putting the label on top of it, but that doesn't mean that that there's really a strong message or kind of something deeper behind it, which makes it also a bit difficult to analyze. So it's often at least and then the city of Palembang is somehow an example for this, and it's kind of future oriented. But and of course, sport is often seen like this modern competitive sport as relating this kind of to Western sports and modernization, with having this, what you said, kind of a Muslim Malay identity. So you wouldn't discuss it too much, because then maybe people about the idea of solidarity games, because that was main actors really put the people in their own city, but just be a very general statement. Again, this kind of struggling between the different messages and who is actually the target group, Jakarta of Indonesia, and that means you also don't want to marginalize them too much with your messages. So on the one hand, there's always the attempt to say, well, sport is something that unites everybody.
But Tina, are you there? Okay.
Yes, I'm here, but I'm in the cafe, so I'm afraid that here is too crowded sound.
Okay. So is it okay? I will read your question
Yes,
for
yes, thank
Frederica.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. If you can read it, thank you.
Okay, so I'm curious to know how such big, expensive sport project can be used to solidify all, although different.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Mega events. So is it only an elite project and this will kind of help to unite people and so on? So is it only an idea of a certain elite, or does it actually really encourage some sort of feeling of national unity and so on? So it's not only the Indonesian context. So in a way, in a more inclusive and complicated to really pinpoint events that have this only kind of a positive to downsize these events and to look more at local and community sports events and to create some feeling of level that event.
Okay,
I hope this.
Thank you, Frederica. Sorry if so much noise here.
But yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Frederica and Mbak Tina. It's just like to us, oh, we are feeling proud with the nation, etc. And that's one of the role of just in Bahasa Indonesia, and I will try to translate it if.
Mbak Olaya, may I ask questions? Hello.
Oh, Pak Iqbal.
Yeah, thank you. Frederica, can your conclusion about Indonesia be generalized to any big sport economically profit? It's become political because it's not something not economically profitable, or that the sport. What do you think about that? Because, for example, with regard to the Asian Games, for example, I'm not sure if Indonesia politically important to organize such events.
Yeah, or to the economy, or is it only really a very vivid debate, especially related to the Olympic Games? So because especially in recent decades, it's hardly possible to host a sports mega event and have an expensive than was calculated in the beginning and so on, and there's always the question then, like, who profits or who's actually paying the bill, and often it's public positive outcome for well, it's probably also that it's not really economically that interesting, but at least what I found positive in a way is that there was more renovation going on concerning venues than building another, I don't know, a huge stadium that is then not used and so on. So at least was a better strategy than building a lot of new ones. Concerning the political interest or kind of outcome, I think we also have to divide into what is more domestic politics and then what is maybe foreign politics, and the international reputation. And I think this is something politicians also often strive for when this in Asia. And of course, it's also again something very difficult to measure, But this is an aspect to be visible also as a country in the international context and taken seriously, and be to domestic politics kind of overrides this more global focus. I think then it's used just for certain politicians and for domestic issues. Really.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Frederica and Pak Iqbal. It's just like, yeah, it's like football into like industries. And there is like other small question in the chat. It's about, Frederica, do you have any idea about the it is like the failure of the Indonesian Football Associations? This is like underrated achievement. Did your research also related with this one? It's a question from Mbak Ana.
I include football, then I'm very happy that, for example, Aulia is doing research on football now. So, I mean, I kind of follow what is going on in the football arena in Indonesia, but it's, yeah, it's kind of embarrassment. So that's very much an outsider's perspective. So I can't say much about it. So I think there are other experts on this.
Or into more like civic power, or it's just like still politicized by certain powers, including the domestic yoga?
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Aulia, and thank you very much, Frederica, for the presentation. And this is close the main event. Please, ladies and gentlemen, open the video to take the photo for documentation. And I would like to say thank you for all participants to participate in this discussion. Mbak Email will be take the picture. Oke. Ya. Silakan Bapak Ibu untuk membuka videonya untuk diambil foto. Oke. First slide.
First slide.
Oke, 1, 2, 3. Ya. And stay healthy.
Yeah, thank you also from my side. Terima kasih banyak and sampai jumpa.
Thank you, Frederica. Thank you.
Terima kasih, Bapak Ibu.
Terima kasih, Aulia, Yoka, Email.
Terima kasih, teman-teman semua.
Terima kasih.
Aulia.
Ada link adsensi nggak ketemu?
Ya,
Mandiri Yogaswara. Kepada Pak Heri kami persilakan.
Baik, Senti, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Jadi memang diminta untuk bisa memberikan sambutan dan pembukaan di dalam acara webinar kali ini. Ya, yang saya hormati Profesor Dr. Tinoke Pujiastuti, peneliti senior Pusat Penelitian Politik LIPI, yang juga merupakan dan juga Bu Nuke, sangat memorable ini ya. Kemudian juga Dr. Nawawi, peneliti di Pusat Riset Kependudukan, dan juga Dr. Ati di BRIN, dan juga Wakil Ketua OC dari Asia Biennial Conference 2022. Kemudian para hadirin yang saya hormati, sungguh berbahagia pada akhirnya kita akan dari rencana akan dilakukannya 4th Asia Biennial Conference yang akan dilakukan pada tanggal 1, tetapi karena kita semua tahu karena persoalan pandemi dan sebagainya memerlukan berbagai adjustment, maka kegiatan akan dilakukan pada tahun 2022. Nah, kegiatan ini merupakan bagian dari kegiatan yang konsorsium Asia ya, dari sebuah konsorsium yang berisi 13 institusi pendidikan dan lembaga riset terkemuka yang ada di Asia ya. Jelas sebagai sebuah konsorsium ada beberapa kegiatan ya sebagai sebuah networking communities begitu, tetapi pada intinya adalah melakukan biennial conference 2021 yang kemudian jadi 2002 dilakukan di Jakarta ya. Ya seperti kita ketahui ya, tujuan dari conference ya pada intinya adalah merupakan sebuah forum perjumpaan akademik yang di dalamnya akan ada kolaborasi riset dan jejaring. Kemudian juga saya kira nanti akan juga oleh OC akan diberitahu tentang opportunity untuk pendidikan dan training ya di dalam conference biasanya itu ada. Kemudian juga bagaimana meningkatkan hubungan antar instansi yang terkemuka di Asia Tenggara dan antar instansi yang terkemuka di Asia Tenggara, dan di antara semua itu perkembangan. Tema tahun ini adalah tema tahun 2002 adalah Managing Disruption, Developing Resilience for Resilient, dan ketiga How to Make It Better. Ya, jadi kita semua tahu disruption adalah satu perubahan besar mendasar, tidak terduga, dan juga mungkin meninggalkan satu konsep lama di dalam ilmu-ilmu sosial. Kita sering bicara tentang perubahan sosial, transformasi sosial, tapi ini bicara disruption. Jadi satu perubahan yang sangat mendasar. Tapi perubahan itu kemudian cara yang Jokowi, kemudian keynote speaker dari Ibu Retno, semuanya masih to be confirmed ya. Karena saya kira yang terakhir di Taiwan pun saya kira Vice atau Prime Minister ya menjadi guest of honor di dalam kegiatan, karena dianggap sebuah kegiatan berbagai sesi-sesi diskusi ya sesuai dengan akan ada 9 subtema dan 53 sesi panel, dan bahkan panitia saya baca masih juga tetap welcome untuk proposal for panel begitu. Ini menunjukkan bahwa kegiatan ini memang sangat beragam, karena persoalan-persoalan disrupsi juga memang sangat besar ya, sangat beragam begitu. Selain itu juga ada banyak kegiatan yang kita sebut supporting event ya, tentang pemutaran film. Ada pesan khusus nih dari Profesor Najib ya, beliau berpesan agar kegiatan conference ini bisa semua conference ini baik kencang acara ini setelah mengikuti acara ini, atau para peserta yang ikut acara ini juga kemudian ikut terlibat di dalam hal menyebarkan undangan ya, dan yang terpenting sebetulnya adalah terlibat sebagai peserta di dalam conference ya. Conference ini kepada jejaring yang dimiliki Ibu Nuke, yang saya kira sejak selesai acara 2019 sudah mulai memikirkan acara conference ini ya. Dan saya ingat nih kami pada saat itu sebagai kepala pusat ya, kita perbaiki conference kita nantinya. Karena yang saya amati bahwa setiap conference Asia itu ya selalu ingin menampilkan dari ikon ya, logo yang sungguh ya di dalam conference tersebut ya, karena kita ingin memperkenalkan Indonesia kepada semua peserta yang hadir ya. Juga yang sekarang menjadi para kepala kantor ya, karena juga terlibat ya di dalam kegiatan persiapan ini, juga para organisasi panel dan sebagainya. Ya, saya ikuti ya bagaimana proses persiapan ini yang betul-betul sangat semangat ya. Banyak perdebatan, banyak diskusi, sampai kemudian muncullah untuk sementara 9 subtema dan 53 panel ya, jadi masih dibuka untuk itu. Juga saya kira kepada panitia ya, kepada MC dan semua pihak yang membantu terselenggaranya kegiatan hari ini. Dengan rahmat Tuhan yang Maha Kuasa, maka dengan Asia Biennial Conference 2022 sampai jumpa.
Terima kasih Pak Heri Yogaswara atas sambutannya yang sudah menyemangati kita semua, rekan-rekan peneliti dan akademisi untuk terlibat. Selanjutnya kita akan beranjak ke acara inti, yaitu pemaparan tentang Asia Conference. Seperti yang sudah disebutkan oleh Pak Heri sebelumnya, sudah ada 3 pembicara yang hadir bersama kita, yaitu Profesor Dr. Tri. Beliau akan memaparkan seluk-beluk tujuan dari Asia Conference dan teknik